co-sponsor was Initiative 200, which banned affirmative action in the state of Washington. I think if you're going to try something for the first time, you want to pick something kind of easy, something that you kind of ease into so that you kind of get your feet wet, see if you liked it. So yeah, let's take on the greatest challenge of all time. And frankly, I was a failure. I sponsored that initiative, was struggling, couldn't qualify it, and eventually ended up putting it up for adoption. And our friend John Carlson took that campaign over and carried it over the finish line. Let's hear it for John for that. But at this point, I said, this is awesome. Putting ideas on the ballot, letting our voters vote on them. So as I passed the baton on to John, I began looking for something else. And one or two people maybe mentioned that their car tabs were really expensive.
Yeah.
And so I sponsored an initiative in 1998, 691 that lowered car tabs. Worked really hard, failed again. So we came back again in 1999, initiative 695. And that initiative, we got on the ballot, it passed, we were so excited, and the court said we were confused by that initiative. Really confusing idea, $30 tabs. I often ask my daughter at some of these presentations, Riley, you're 13, what does the $30 tabs initiative do? She goes, it gives everyone $30. And I said, my 13-year-old daughter is smarter than the justices on the state Supreme Court. But what ended up happening is it was struck down. So kind of another failure. The legislature adopted it anyway, but that one was another failure. So the next year, we did Initiative 722, putting a cap on the growth of property taxes of 2%. Voters voted for it, and the court said, confusing. Very confusing. So they struck it down. So the following year, after that failure, we did an initiative that said, okay, you didn't like 2% as a growth limit, we're going to do 1%. You don't like 2%? We're going to tighten the belt even tighter the second time. This initiative passed by a wider margin than the previous one. And it is an exceptional law that's still in effect today. It's an amazing thing. But 5 years later, the court said the voters had been misled into voting for that initiative. The power I have. That I was able to persuade people and mislead them into voting for that measure. But the legislature adopted it anyway, so we ended up getting that. The next year we did $30 tabs again. And this time the voters voted for it, and in 2002 I ended up getting in a lot of trouble. I had a PDC complaint filed because I had admitted on television that I was being compensated for my political work, but I wasn't being honest about it. And so during that entire campaign, as we're collecting signatures for this initiative, they're just beating the crap out of me for not being upfront about that. But the following November, the voters voted for the initiative, which was a lesson to me that the voters don't care about me, they like the ideas, that's what really matters. Yep. So it was a great, great accomplishment, and the court upheld that initiative. But they said when it comes to sound transit, it doesn't really apply.
Yeah.
So another failure. What I'm leading up to is that every single one of those initiatives, every one of them that was a failure, they have, by their passage, by their influence, have saved the taxpayers of the last 22 years a total of $46 billion. Winston Churchill famously said, success is moving from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. That was the lesson of politics. That's the difficulty of politics. How many times do they throw roadblocks in our way? Now I'm going to go rapid fire. In 2003, we did an initiative that tried to cap and bring back Initiative 601. Didn't qualify for the ballot. I helped get the initiative on the ballot that shrunk the size of the King County Council from 13 to 9, and the voters voted for that. 2004, we tried to get a reduction in property taxes. Didn't get enough signatures. In 2005, we did one on performance audits, allowing the auditor to do performance audits of state and local governments. It qualified, it passed, it's still the law today. In 2006, we did $30 tabs again. We fell 5,000 signatures short of qualifying for the ballot. 5,000. 2007, we ended up doing an initiative to renew the 2/3 requirement for the legislature to raise taxes. Overwhelmingly passes. For 2 years, they didn't raise a single tax. And it was because that law was in effect. In 2010, Gregoire, first law she signs into law was suspending the 2/3 requirement because it had been in effect for 3 years. I went to the bill signing, and as she's signing the bill, I'm holding my nose and putting my thumb down for the official bill signing photo. And I took a pen, because they give out pens at bill signings, and we were using that pen to collect signatures for that year's initiative. So in 2010, that year, when we're trying to renew the 2/3, because she just took it away, I took out a second mortgage on our house, and we loaned the campaign $250,000 to get that one qualified. Because you got to get these initiatives qualified for the ballot, and you've got to get things moving. In 2011, we did an initiative to put limits on tolls. Got it on the ballot, voters didn't vote for it. 2012, we renewed the 2/3 requirement for raising taxes. Got more votes than any initiative in state history. Qualified for the ballot, passed overwhelmingly, and 2 months later, the Supreme Court contradicted itself over 20 years of rulings and said, we've now decided, despite the fact that we've dismissed lawsuits previously, that 2/3 is unconstitutional.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do that.
Oh.
That just so happened to be when Jay Inslee came into office. And we all felt so good because we said to ourselves, don't worry, we don't need the 2/3, because I heard Inslee say, I will not raise taxes if elected. So we were able to count on that. I saw him say it. He said it repeatedly throughout the campaign. Who needs the 2/3? We've got Jay Inslee. He's going to keep his word, isn't he? Did not. 2013, we tried to do an initiative that improved the initiative process. Voters didn't like it. 2014, we tried to do a 2/3 requirement for the Constitution. Fell short. The following year, we did an initiative to try and get the 2/3 constitutional amendment. Fell short. 2016, we ended up qualifying it. The voters vote for it, and the court said it just did too many things. It just did too many things. So they struck it down. But the following week, the Senate ended up adopting a 2/3 rule for raising taxes. Because the voters had voted for it, they wanted to give us some of it, and that's back when we had the majority coalition caucus. And they ended up passing this rule, and we ended up getting a couple more years of the 2/3 requirement. 2017, we did a $30 tabs initiative, fell short. 2018, this is when Tim went off the rails. Karen and I, we ended up selling off our retirement fund, and we loaned the campaign $500,000 to ended up kickstarting the initiative. And I remembered using what I call the rocking chair test. And the rocking chair test says, looking back on your life, visualize yourself 80 years old, looking back and saying, what do I regret? And I said to myself, if I walk away from $30 tabs, after Sound Transit shafted us, lied to us, said that this thing is just going to be a tiny little tax, and we all got the bill, I said in that rocking chair test, I want to pull out all the stops. While this is going on, my last 5 minutes after Glenn takes over, I'm going to talk about the lawsuit that Ferguson was hitting me with, but that was happening at the same time. So the initiative qualifies for the ballot. Nothing short of a miracle. The thing qualifies. All of 2019, I'm traveling the state with my daughter, trying to promote the initiative, trying to get the voters to vote for it. The voters voted for it, and a week later, Seattle sued the voters because they said, we're here to uphold the Seattle vote. Mayor Durkin sued the voters and say, we're here to uphold the will of Seattle. I've heard of uphold the will of the people. I'd never heard will of Seattle. So I said, I'm running for governor. I'm running for governor. I was so angry and so upset about what they had done, about how the voters had voted for it. They had spent $5 million saying vote no on $30 tabs because Tim Eyman's a bad guy. And the voters voted for it anyway, and they sued. And right in the midst of this lawsuit, I said to myself, running for governor, let me do that. So I ran. It was an amazing experience. Michelle Darnell and I have so many war stories to tell about this period of time. I had never run for anything in my life, but I was so motivated to do something, anything, to be able to fight back against this kind of injustice and to fight back against the Attorney General that was trying to shut me down. I ended up losing in the primary against Loren Culp. And like anybody on the Democrat side, I'm going to lay all the blame on Doug Bassler. It's totally his fault. It wasn't me. He did my video voters guide, clearly did a horrible job because the voters ended up voting for the other guy. No, he did a fantastic job. No, people chose Loren Culp over me. I literally took about 5 minutes to accept it because for 22 years I had run on let the voters decide. The voters voted. They chose the other guy. So I immediately contacted the Loren Culp campaign and said, let me help you. Let me go out on the campaign trail and let me promote Loren Culp. And they let me do that. It was so great. And I had the most amazing experience because I was able to do it with my daughter. Now, how many people have seen Riley Eyman in action? Every one of you with your hands down, you have missed out. You will have to find a video of her because she's an amazing young lady. I have 3 kids. I have 2 boys and a little girl, and she's the youngest and she's the only girl. You're not allowed to have a favorite child. You're just not. But I'm just saying. An amazing young lady. And so what we did was, and Loren Culp, I just love, how many Loren Culp fans in the room? I was so pleased and proud to be promoting him. I thought head and shoulders better than Inslee, but just a really, really good guy. And so I was very, very proud to be part of that. And all these events, they allowed me and Riley to be able to do this George and Gracie like presentation. I'm dating myself with George and Gracie. Anybody? George, Gracie, George Burns, Gracie. Yeah. Young people, you'll go Google it. So anyway, we had this exchange back and forth for 10 or 15 minutes. We're promoting Loren, but at the same time we're mocking Jay Inslee. And I'm the straight man, and she's delivering the laugh lines. And she was so funny and so comfortable. And what I saw her, what happened to her, is she developed her confidence. And I thought she was confident when she started. But it was an amazing thing that I took the love that I have for my family, and I was able to combine it with my love for politics. And it was an amazing, extraordinary, wonderful thing. And I am just so happy that at the end of the day, I was able to combine these 2 things together. So the reason I tell you all these stories, and the reason I want to kind of give you a little background on me, is that politics is hard. It's really hard. Glenn Morgan is a fellow masochist, somebody who's chosen a life of politics as a political activist. And I don't feel right saying that we chose this life. I think in many ways it chose us. But I've often heard it said that find what you love to do and you will never work a day in your life. And for 22 years, there hasn't been a single day that I didn't love it. Love it. Every day of it. Every second of it. Because every day is an amazing chance to do something, and maybe do something extraordinary, and maybe it's something you can never talk about, and maybe something you can never put on a sheet of paper, but every day for me is just absolute, complete joy. But, a little applause. But I do have one extra motivation. Every day that I am politically active in the state of Washington is a day that Bob Ferguson failed. Literally, his lawsuit was seeking massive amount of money, but seeking a lifetime ban on all future political activity by me. Lifetime ban. I'm 55 years old. I'm adopted. I actually know my birth parents, and they're very healthy people. They're living into their 80s and 90s. I'm going to be around a long time. And every single day that I'm out there trying to make a difference, every day that I'm meeting with fellow activists, every day that I have the joy and the pleasure of being invited to be able to speak is absolute euphoria for me. I love it. I love everything about it. The political process is just, it's dirty. It's just ugly. It's just a snake pit. And I love it. I just love it. It's so fantastic to be able to do what you love to do. And this is the place to do it. I would be so bored in Texas. I would be bored in Idaho. I would not have a fellow masochist like Glenn Morgan with me out trying to make a difference in Washington. Because being a conservative in the state of Washington is hard. It's really hard. But if it was easy, I wouldn't want to do it. I'm stripped down to the studs. For the last 8.5 years, this lawsuit, investigation, persecution has been going on. Started in 2012. It was a complaint filed. And the government began investigating. And they asked for stuff. And the more you gave them, the more they asked for. And you just kept going and going. And so I have lawyered up, and eventually they asked for more information, and then more information. And it just kept going on and on like this. And while this is going on, I'm consulting with people like Glenn, and Glenn's saying, pedal to the metal. This is the time where you really have to go harder on these guys, because you cannot let them intimidate you. You need to lean into it. So while this is going on, it's going on, and the legal bills are escalating, and I'm asking friends to give me money. Give me money. One of the advantages you have when you've been stripped down to the studs is you lose the concepts of pride, shame, anything like that. You have to be shameless. So, with that, I owe, because of this judge's ruling, $5.5 million. $5.5 million. And so what I think is important is, this is a bobblehead of me. This is from some years ago. And so eventually we will be sending around, it's got the cape on, it's actually kind of cool. So anyway, anybody who gives me $5.5 million gets the bobblehead. Just saying. Just saying. So the flyer that you have kind of explains things. But I'm living in a weird world where the judge has said I am no longer a person, I am now a political committee. So Tim Eyman personally is a political committee. So being a political committee, it is illegal for me to spend any of my own money on personal expenses. So under the rules that they've laid out, I'm not allowed to ask any of you to help me personally. But he allowed me, bless his heart, the judge, such a good guy, big believer in the First Amendment, I'm allowed to beg for legal help. He at least allowed me that. And so I'm expressing myself in a legal way by begging you to donate money to me. But you can't give me cash, because I'm a political committee, and if you hand me money, that is illegal. I'm not allowed to touch money anymore. Because I'm a political committee, I'm not allowed to have friends anymore. You're all political contributors in the minds of the court. For 8.5 years, I was begging people, give me money. make checks payable to Tim Eyman, make checks payable to Tim Eyman and family, make checks payable to Tim Eyman Legal Defense Fund. As the Attorney General is examining, as he mirrors my hard drive, as he asks for 10 years of tax returns, as he looks through every single document I have, he found nothing that I had done wrong. Not one thing, but he found that a lot of people were helping me. And so what he said was, you know what? Those are campaign contributions.
Oh, jeez.
So checks made payable to Tim Eyman and family, Tim Eyman Legal Defense Fund, were now reclassified as political contributions. And because in 2012, I formed into a political committee. I don't know they actually had a day that I realized I was one. And I refused to file the paperwork saying that I was a political committee. So on that day, when help me out, what's the caterpillar and the butterfly? Help me out. I metamorphosized into a political committee. So in 2017, the AG held a big press conference. And he said, I'm going after Eyman, I'm suing Eyman. Yep. So I go pedal to the metal, go even more politically active. That's when we sold off the retirement fund to do the initiatives. And while all this awfulness is going on, we're collecting signatures for the $30 tabs initiative. And I was quoted in the Seattle Times, July 2018, that said, it is clear that the Attorney General is trying to stop me from being politically active. And do you know what my reaction to that is? And that is to become more politically active than I've ever been in my entire life. So normally at these events, I hold up a bucket, which is nice and shameless and prideless and all that, and say, give me money. But that was back when I was a person. That was before Political Action Committee Tim became a reality. So I'm not going to pass around the bucket, but I do ask you to walk out of here with one of these flyers that has the address to mail a check toward my legal defense fund. I would really ask you to do it. He has stripped me down to the studs, where every penny I ever earned in my entire life is gone. Every dollar I raised over the last 8.5 years is gone. I've got about $16,000 left in the bank. And I'm trying to pay lawyers to appeal this ridiculous decision. Ridiculous decision. The Attorney General, during this entire process, what is he doing? He is seeking to depose my wife and depose my sister-in-law. Do you know why he wants to investigate these two women? He wants to investigate them because during all this time, I was paying my wife child support and I was paying my sister-in-law rent in order to be able to live in Bellevue. And he's going to drag these two women in for a 3 to 4 hour deposition to investigate and to ask them questions and to make them uncomfortable and to make me uncomfortable. This is so small, petty, vindictive. It is on a different level. I don't throw around the word evil when it comes to our political opponents, but it's hard not to think of a word like that when I think of Bob Ferguson and what he has done to people that are close to me. My last story, and it's hard for me not to talk about this because it just makes me so angry. It's almost like he realized that I've got a dinosaur skin and he knows that no matter what he hits me with, I am the cockroach that will survive the nuclear holocaust. So what do we do? Let's target the people that are closest to him. And so during the investigation, he found the people, the top 35 donors that had helped me over the previous 8 years, and he dragged them in for 3-hour depositions saying, why did you give Tim Eyman money? what was your motivation behind giving him money? And they were trying to get them to admit that they had given a political contribution to me. And they were saying, I know the difference between a political contribution and money that I gave to Tim, but what I gave to Tim said Tim Eyman on it. And in the memos line, they said gift. And they were making it clear. And the Legal Defense Fund, same thing. The judge ruled it doesn't matter what the donor thought when they gave it.
Oh, wow.
It does not matter. So they dragged in 35 very, very good people to drag them through hours of depositions, trying to get them to go through this uncomfortable process. Of those 35 people, 2 of them still talk to me. That was the goal. That was the motivation. That was why he did it. That's why he's going after Karen and Carol. The whole idea is we can't get him, so let's get the people that are closest to him. So this Legal Defense Fund is my way to be able to fight back against that dirty dog, and it's a chance for you to be able to fight back against him. Because this is a political and legal precedent that we cannot be allowed to stand. Because if I'm a political action committee, then is Glenn Morgan one? I'm just looking around the room. I can find so many people in here that are politically active and say, you could be next. Yep. So as much as I like to say, please help me, please help me, please help every conservative activist in the state of Washington by giving money to this legal defense fund. I'm going to turn it over to Glenn, but I'm going to make this very, very, very clear, is that I'm not the only one. Glenn Morgan has a massive debt of his own, $120,000. 5.5 million. And he doesn't have a bobblehead. No, he just wants you. But I think it's really important that it is not a zero-sum game. If you give to me, you don't give to Glenn, or you give to Glenn and you don't give to me. Both of us desperately need your help. He is not as shameless as I am. He still has an ounce of pride still in his life. He feels uncomfortable asking strangers for money for him personally. He will always defer and say, no big deal, it's all fine. It's $120,000 that he owes because some whack job decides to sue him only because she was a big donor to the Democratic Party. So you're walking out of here with a sheet of paper, you darn well better, every one of you, where I'm begging you to give me money, but I want you to also go and help Glenn with his lawsuit. And with people helping us, we will be able to survive this and be able to overcome this. And as naive as this is going to make me sound, I'm fully confident that the higher courts are going to think this is ridiculous, what they've done to my basic First Amendment rights. I don't know about the money side of things, 5.5 million, make it 55 million. I don't care. I don't have it. But the reality is we do need to pay our attorneys to be able to defend us during this time. And I have Richard Sanders, former Supreme Court Justice, did an exceptional job, and he was the funniest guy in the world. He said, all evidence to the contrary, I gave you a very good defense. The judge rubber-stamped everything the AG did. But he did his job. He made all the right arguments. These weren't political contributions. Of course they didn't have to be reported. Only the treasurer is responsible for reporting political contributions. He was never the treasurer. He made all the right arguments, and the judge didn't care. With Glenn, he got stuck with a Thurston County judge, biggest whack job you're ever going to find in your life, and she rubber-stamped what the other side was looking for. So you're not going to give me 5.5 million. The bobblehead, I think, is safely mine. But I would ask you to give to the Legal Defense Fund so that I can pay Richard to be able to defend me on this appeal. And Glenn Morgan, great guy, amazing guy, a little too humble for my taste, but ask him for his address, and please donate to his Legal Defense Fund as well.